All right. This is Paul Hedrick, and I am here with.
Mama Hedrick, beep beep.
And this is episode 3 of Let's Talk About Jesus.
Yay!
On an interesting turn of events, my mom has requested to start this discussion off. That's exactly why I like to do things unplanned, because I feel that doing it unscripted provides the most transparency. Without further ado, you may start it off.
Okay. Well, I can't remember if it was earlier this week or if it was last week. But I had gone to bed and I was just praying.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've always known about myself and um but really just didn't pay any attention to it until recently has been the fact that due to my childhood,
Mhm.
due to things that has happened to me throughout my life, I have shut myself down and I have not allowed myself to feel anything because of the pain that I've gone through. And
Right.
I think there are a lot of people like that, like me. They've dealt with so much through life and they finally just shut down and they don't want to feel anything anymore.
Sure.
And so I got to a point in this last week, and I think it's all just a part of uh, God showing me who I am,
Mhm.
um, and God dealing with me on things that need to be dealt with. And I just began to ask Him to teach me how to feel, to take the ice that is around my heart and start melting it,
Mhm.
because I've discovered I want to start feeling things. Whenever I say that I love you, Paul, I want to be able to feel that genuinely in my heart.
Mhm.
And so that has been, um, that's been happening. And, like with the pups, I never allowed myself to love them, to
Mhm.
really feel that for them.
Right.
But, you know, I do love these little boogers. And as aggravating as they can be sometimes, they are our responsibility. And, I have found that I do love them. I don't want to just feel the anger and the hurt and the pain.
Yeah.
I want to feel the happy things too. So, fast forward to yesterday, and there has been a man that I have been talking to that I kind of felt like we were moving toward a relationship. And he he kind of what's the term that I want to use? He kind of knocked me on my butt yesterday with something that he said to me. That's something that he told me. And my immediate first action or thought is shut down, because you are not worthy of love. You are not worthy of any good thing. And this just proves it. You open yourself up, and here it goes. Well, first off, I know that this is a man that God has told me is not going to be my husband. He'd already told me that. He's told me who my husband is, and he has not wavered from that. And
Wait, this is news to me. He's told you who
Well,
your husband is?
whenever it happens, you'll know for sure. But point being though, is that instead of shutting down and backing away, I asked God to help me through that I didn't want to shut down. And, you know, this guy, all he wants is friendship. Well, I don't think I can be that friend to him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wish him well. I don't wish any ill harm to him at all. Um, but the biggest lesson is that you know this wanting to feel things and wanting to experience happy thoughts and good thoughts was very soon put to test. And I I think maybe I passed the test. I'm not depressed. I'm not, like, oh God, you know, uh, because I am worthy of love, and I am worthy of a good man. And not that that's the be all end all of life is to be in a relationship, but God didn't intend us, not Nintendo. He did not intend for us to be alone. He made Adam, Eve, to be a helpmeet to him. And that's what I want. I'm no different than anybody else. And so I guess that I'm just very thankful that God is patient with me, that He allows me those times. Even last night, I told you that I just didn't want to talk. I just felt like shutting down because I wanted to process everything. But I didn't shut down. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
I I'm okay. So there you have it.
So my question then becomes, how can we turn that conversation around to glorify God?
Well, because it was God who has been helping me, who's been showing me how to have joy. And if if you are struggling with something, if you have asked God to help you with something, if He has shown you um, something that you need to work on, He will give you the way. He will show you the way to work on it, and He will help you through that. Whereas if I'm doing this on my own, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be bitter. I'm going to lash out at this person. Um, all those things. But I'm not. And it's because of God's love and His patience and His mercy to me that He does get the glory for helping me to not go into the mode that I usually go in whenever I get hurt.
Mm-hmm. So, what advice could you give to people who may be going through something similar to what you've been through?
You mean like in this last week, like yesterday, like my whole
Um,
life?
I'm thinking more like long term.
Hmm.
However, for the sake of time, because there's a lot to cover, um, let's just do like within the last week. So, for example, someone someone finds out that the person they thought they were going to be with has decided to move on and go with someone else, but things were moving in a relationship since for them. How can that person who's been hurt cope with that, find peace, come to an understanding?
Well, first off, because I've been there and I was devastated, even more than whenever your dad and I separated and divorced. And there was an incident there that God gave me instant peace about that, and I never looked back. But no, and it's so true, even though you don't feel it, you know, even though you don't realize it at the time, sometimes God will remove people from our lives that are poison.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to realize that that's the way that person is, and who that person is to us. But he
Mm-hmm.
does that out of love. And you're going to hurt. I think the worst thing you can do is to not acknowledge that you're in pain and go on and act like you're all happy and everything's fine, because that's just not the way it is. But keep turning to God, keep looking in your Bible, keep reading in your Bible. I have um I wish that I could eliminate every political statement off of my Facebook page, but because that is probably the worst thing that is on Facebook at this point in time, and it's filled with nothing but hate. But fill your like your social media, fill it with things of God, inspiration, uh you know Bible text, and um different groups um that promote you know God, and promote, send those inspirational sayings, because I have drawn a lot of strength from those.
Yeah.
And don't isolate yourself. Keep yourself around people. I'm a loner, um, but don't isolate yourself. Get out there and enjoy life. Enjoy life as much as you can. When Paul was little, and I think this is a perfect example, okay? When you were little and you would be upset about something, I would look at you
That
and I
never
would say,
happened.
oh, yeah, I did. Um, and I would say to you, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I would say, okay, you've got 5 minutes to express every thought that you have about what you're going through right now. What if you were mad or whatever it was. Throw your fit for 5 minutes. But when that 5 minutes is up, we're done and we move on. And we did that. You did that quite a few times, actually. But when that time was up, you had been allowed to vent, to show whatever displeasure you were having at that point in time, and then we moved on.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that helps or not, but because everybody's individual, you have to draw your strength from wherever you draw it from. Mine happens to be with God and the Bible, and filling my thoughts with things of God. The
So,
end.
so let's kind of move topics a little bit, shall we? Let's let's examine some common questions that are asked of Christians.
Okay.
So I'd like for you to start with asking.
You mean me ask you?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so why do you believe the way you believe? Why are you so strong in your belief in God?
Okay. So for me, growing up in the church, I started to rebel. Um, Part of that came from a lack of belief. I wasn't necessarily atheist. I just didn't feel that it was logical that a God could exist. It didn't make sense. And so I started to rebel. And then, whenever depression entered my life, um, I started to just kind of go down the suicidal route. I came into the heavy metal scene, um, and that's not to dog on metal specifically. That's just what happened for me. But I noticed that with the songs I was listening to, that there was a largely satanic message, and that's not, like I said, to say anything of every metal band, just the ones that I chose to listen to. So I started embracing that ideology because after studying it, um, to me it made more sense, and the way it presented was, like an atheistic religion, whenever in reality, whenever you get in, you realize it's not. Um, so at that point is whenever I kind of became comfortable with the idea of, okay, there's no God. Um, but whenever I had my first encounter with God, um, it was in 2012, and the way it happened was it was the day that I was suicidal and being bullied at church camp of all places. Because this entire time that I was rebelling, I was still going to church because a certain someone made me. And
Always make sure your kids go to church with you. It's important.
yes, so I had my first encounter with God, and that's whenever I became a Christian, but that's not whenever I got saved. Uh, that's an entire video topic in and of itself. But so whenever I had that experience, it's like, okay, there's something out there. There's enough evidence now because I've experienced it personally. There is something out there. There has to be. And it just so happened that I really did believe that my experience was with the Christian God, and that's what I still claim to this day. Um, so the reason that I believe that God is real, that I know God is real, in addition to the personal experiences that I've had with God throughout my entire life, the ways that God has protected me, um, just stuff like that. I believe that there is even enough evidence and science to suggest that God does indeed exist. The biggest piece, of course, being everything: the earth, the seas, the people, the animals, the plantation. I believe that it all points to intelligent design. And so then the question kind of becomes, okay, so if there is indeed an intelligent designer of the universe, who is it? What is it? And so you have to kind of identify which religion provides the most unique outlook. And this is just my own thought process on it at this point. But which religion provides the most unique outlook uh, to creation? Some religion does not teach creation, some does, in very strange ways. So for me, it would make sense that there'd be an Abrahamic religion that would be true. Um, the reason for that is that the stories of the Bible largely have been proven to be accurate. We know that there was a flood. Um, we know that there was historical crucifixions. We know that Pilate was indeed real. We know that even Jesus himself was real. So at that point, once you make those realizations, okay, Pilate was real, Jesus was real, the flood happened, that does narrow it down to the Abrahamic religion. Um, so then you have to determine which Abrahamic religion.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's kind of like you have to look at the most unique one. Which one sets itself apart?
Mm-hmm.
And the top three Abrahamic religions predominantly are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And I found that two out of the three agree in many ways, and one has agreements in some parts, But there's a critical difference. So Islam and Judaism agrees that Jesus was a prophet, whereas Christianity teaches that Jesus was the Son of God and that he was crucified, suffered and died on the cross for our sins, and that he resurrected 3 days later. And, once you put it like that, once you look at it in that regard, there's no way that you can possibly not believe in God. And then if you want to look at further evidence, we have historical firsthand account of the resurrection. These people that claimed to see Jesus after he died and was put in the tomb, they were real historical people. They really walked the earth alongside Jesus. They saw him whenever he was alive. I think that only one of his disciples was actually at his crucifixion, but they saw him after he was buried, or put in the tomb, rather. So to me, there's just simply enough historical and scientific evidence that would suggest that God is real. And whenever you double that with the personal experience, there's no question.
Okay.
So, why do you believe in God?
Well, of course, I'm not as deep of a thinker as you are. I don't analyze everything like you do. I mean, you study. That's what you've done. That's what you've enjoyed doing. And I'm glad that you do because, growing up, we just accepted what we were told. But I am finding a new awareness in the Bible. I am finding, like I can hear God talk to me, and he talks to me often. And what makes that real to me and what makes me know that it's him is he confirms it. I don't think that you can have things happen in your life without confirmation through the Bible, through word of mouth. There was something last night that I was talking to someone, and I had only told you about what I had only told you what I felt God had told me about something. And this person that I was talking to had no idea that God had given me that word. And, he's not someone that we talk to every day, usually around rent time. But anyway, he said something to me that just totally threw me for a loop. And it made me realize that what God had told me, that this man was giving me confirmation of what God had told me. And I think it's important that we do have that confirmation. But there have been too many things happen in my life that would suggest that God is God. A few months ago, I went through the cancer. You have cervical cancer. And then it was, no, it's precancer. And then it was, well, no, we got the biopsy back and it's just inflammation. That didn't happen. I mean, it was, you have cancer. The initial report is you have cancer. How do you explain that? There is no explanation for that except for that God touched me and he told me he was going to, he put that bubble over me. When I found out, he put that bubble over me. So, I guess that my belief in God comes from personal experience and him confirming to me what he has told me. Does that may not be quite as good of an answer as what you gave,
It's
but
not about that. I think it's I don't know, it's fascinating to see why people believe what they believe.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and in the Bible it does say, to be instant in your, whenever you're questioned.
You froze. All right, guys, we're having some technical difficulties here. We're going to pause and try to reconnect.